Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome to another Mortal Kombat video. In today's breakdown and analysis, I wanted to fundamentally talk about Spawn as a character. What is he exactly all about? And really this video serves as a way for all of you to get a bit more familiar with him. As you see, Spawn is an iconic character from the 90s era of comics. Although he was extremely popular during that time, by the end of the 90s the character somewhat dropped off the face of the earth and isn't really a face you see that often in the comic book industry, especially when you have huge titans like Marvel and DC, who have been doing extremely well over the last decade and a half by building cinematic universes on the big screen. So in saying that, today's video will be getting you familiar with Simmons and letting you know all the basics about who Spawn is. Now before we talk about Spawn as a character, I think first it'd be really interesting to talk about his creation as well as his inspiration, because there truly is quite a story behind this. Now the creator of Spawn, that being Todd McFarlane, had previously worked under labels such as DC and Marvel and gained a lot of traction and success from working on Spider-Man, as his art style really did stick out and captured the attention of readers across the world. And this really came after Marvel's Secret Wars, where Peter Parker's Spider-Man had obtained this mysterious black suit. Now originally there weren't any plans for the suit to be anything more than a costume, but when Todd was part of the creative team, he was not at all a big fan of the design, as he believed that Spider-Man should be red and blue. Now this did stir a bit of controversy, as fans did like the black suit design, so Todd had the genius idea of separating the suit and having it become its own character while still allowing Peter to retain his old Spider-Man costume. So Todd was able to draw Spider-Man as he wished and create an extremely iconic character that we all know today, that being Venom, a symbiotic suit that bonds with a host and gives them extreme power. Now this led to some extremely iconic battles and panels between Spider-Man and Venom, and when Todd saw the reception that the character did get, he decided to take some of the ideas and concepts left on the table from Venom and use them to create a character when he made his own label, that of course now being Image Comics. So a lot of ideas and inspirations that he in fact had were taken from the aftermath of the Marvel Secret Wars saga, hence why Venom and Spawn in fact share a lot of similarity. In fact, in the last few years or so, despite Spawn looking like this in the early 90s, Spawn is now seen with a mouth and sometimes with a tongue hanging out, of course referencing and showing the influence that Venom did have on the character. Now with his creation aside, let's talk about Spawn, but more specifically Simmons, as he will be the Spawn that will be playable in Mortal Kombat 11. Now our somewhat hero is Albert Francis Simmons. Being born in Detroit, Michigan, he was part of a family of 5, being the second child of Bernard Simmons and Esther Simmons. Now Al was a rather troubled individual growing up, getting into a lot of trouble as a young teenager, but despite his rather snide and street-like attitude, Simmons was physically talented, and thus in his later years would join the military, working his way up to the top and became Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Marine Corps. However, he was not satisfied with his position and did actually want more out of his life. He would later join the United States Secret Service and later on the CIA. Now Simmons' lone wolf attitude and behavior did rub people the wrong way, and this would ultimately lead to his own demise from the director of the National Security Council, that being Jason Wynn. During a mission in Botswana, Simmons would be killed by his friend and partner Chapel, thus being sent to hell for all the people he killed and really kick off the Spawn series. You see, whilst residing in hell, Simmons had made a deal with the devil, that being Malbolgia. Now the deal was that Simmons would become a servant of hell, that being a hellspawn, but be given the somewhat free will to walk the world of man once more, as Simmons did have a wife, that being Wanda, so he did understandably want to see her again. But upon returning back to the world of man, Al was seemingly stripped of his memory until he decided to dig deeper into his past, eventually remembering the main reason as to why he had returned. But things weren't exactly as they seemed, because as one would expect, you never make a deal with the devil and expect things to go well. You see, when Al had returned, it was 5 years after he had died, and Wanda had in fact moved on, finding solace and love with Al's best friend Terry, and together the two in fact had a child, that being Cyan. So Al in a way was somewhat screwed out of the chance to salvage his relationship, and there was a bit of turmoil between himself as well as Terry. Now as one would expect, this would breed a lot of resentment between Al Simmons as well as Malbolgia, but he'd still made a deal with the devil, and to make sure that Al followed through in his decision, he'd be monitored by a clown, aka the Violator. Violator is a sadistic monster that thrives on the pain and suffering of humans, and as you would expect, he really did would relish in the misfortune of Al Simmons, especially when you take into account that it was his job to monitor and make sure that Al followed through on his end of the deal. So again, Malebolgia continued to twist the knife in Al's back, and he just seemed like a puppet of hell until he came across an old man known as Cogliostro. Now Cog himself is a former Hellspawn, being the fabled Cain of Cain and Abel. After murdering his brother, he in turn also made a deal with the devil, but unlike Al, he was able to strip himself of the devil's shackles and continue to walk the world of man. You see, the symbiotic suit itself can be seen as the devil's brand. It shows that a deal has been established between said individual by Malebolgia himself. But the one interesting thing about this symbiotic suit is the devil in the detail. You see, every Hellspawn that's arisen does in fact have a timer tied to them, as the Hellspawns and the suit itself run in a dark form of energy known as necroplasm. All suits start out at 9,999 and slowly tick down over time. When a Hellspawn eventually reaches 0, they have fulfilled their contract and will return back to hell. Now as long as you don't use the suit's supernatural capabilities, it will not deplete, but being a Hellspawn and an agent of the devil does naturally put a target on your head. Now when Al learnt how badly the devil had screwed him, Al somewhat severed his ties with the devil, not wanting to be involved in the battle between heaven and hell, but to instead serve as a protector of humanity, using the powers of hell to do so. And over the years, this would cause him to clash with many supernatural deities, including Malebolgia, the Violator, agents of heaven like Angela, and the Redeemers. So despite Al making a deal with the devil, he'd protect humans from the supernatural, as well as those who preyed on the weak. Which is why I guess Spawn is such a compelling anti-hero. Despite being stripped of his humanity, he wishes to help and save those that do retain it. By doing so, it may in fact bring back a fraction of what he lost. And I feel like that's one of the greater aspects of this character. But now that we're done with this somewhat bare bones breakdown of Spawn, as I do highly recommend you check out the comic book run, what are Spawn's abilities? What does the suit do that makes him so incredibly strong? Well, as I briefly mentioned, the suits themselves are made up of necroplasm, and in a way are somewhat sentient, as they do somewhat function like the symbiotic suit that Venom has. Although they themselves don't really have any character to them, they greatly increase the power of the wielder through necroplasm and allow the host to manifest and enhance their weapons. So one that we typically see with Spawn is the utilization of his chains and crimson cape, as well as what other weapon he may be wielding. This does vary from Hellspawn to Hellspawn, as we have seen different ones throughout the series, such as the Norse Hellspawn and Izanagi Nakadai, a feudal Japan themed spawn, so the suit will significantly increase whatever weapon they may be wielding. And in saying that, we do have an image that's been released by Todd McFarlane that shows that Spawn in Mortal Kombat 11 will in fact have a sword, something that you wouldn't really associate with the character up until recently. You see, Al Simmons died for a while in 2008, but did come back from the dead and reclaim his title as Spawn. When he did so, he was literally given a sword by God, known as the Sword of the Spirit. It was a weapon so fierce and powerful that it would allow him to vanquish any demon on any plane of existence. So it is incredibly strong. However, I will say that the sword on the figure looks very different to the one on the comics, so I doubt they're the exact same, but it's worth keeping this idea in mind at least. Now, other weapons you can typically see Spawn having are guns from time to time. Of course, Al himself having a military-based background means that he does have experience utilizing firearms, so I feel like that is no surprise. But now let's quickly go back to talking about the suit. Now, as I've mentioned, the suit runs on necroplasm, and a very interesting aspect here is that they can utilize this necroplasm as a weapon, using it to cast spells, create bombs, so their life force does function as a weapon, and again is yet another plan of Malebolgia to slowly take down the life of the Hellspawn, as the different techniques they use over the course of time will slowly deplete their necroplasm counter. So I definitely believe we will see some green beams of energy in Mortal Kombat 11. But this for the most part covers everything that I did want to talk about with Spawn, as well as give you a basic breakdown about who Al Simmons is and what he's all about before he's in Mortal Kombat 11, since Spawn is mostly known from the 90s era of comics, and there are many Mortal Kombat fans that may have been extremely late to his debut. So I hope that in this video it sparked some of your interest, you've come away learning a little bit more, and that hopefully it may intrigue you to want to pick up a comic, as Spawn really is a unique character to the genre and a really big pioneer of the 90s era. But yes, that's everything I did want to say here. Now, what are your thoughts on Spawn? And if any of you are big fans of the character, please do down in the comments below leave one interesting fact that I haven't mentioned in this video. Spread the word, show the love, as we are not too far away from his reveal. So with that being said, before this video wraps up, if possible, let's try getting it to about 500 likes, and also do not forget to tick that bell and subscribe, as it will keep you up to date with what's going on with the channel and what I do have in the pipeline. But until then, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I will see you all next time.